Good evening. I am joined by Christina Mary, who is the National Coordinator of the National Domestic Workers Movement. My first question to you is legally, what does the word domestic worker mean? What are the criteria according to which you can categorize someone into a domestic worker?
The domestic workers, they perform cooking, cleaning, swabbing, mopping, washing, caring for the children, caring for elderly, caring for patients, and shopping. They also do gardening and driving. And there are three types of domestic workers: part-time domestic workers, full-time domestic workers, and live-in domestic workers. The part-time domestic workers work in a house 1 or 2 hours, and they work in 7 to 8 houses. Full-time domestic workers work from morning till the evening in the employer's house, and they do all type of works. And the living domestic workers stay with the employers, and they mostly they do child care, elderly care, patient care, or cooking, cleaning, all what is essential for the employer's house they perform.
So, these categorizations of domestic workers, where do you get it from? Is this based on a report or on a study?
This is a category already ILO definition defines. Also, some of the studies done by the government and some private organizations which have done have categorized. And there is no statistics on domestic work since the national survey done by the government don't categorize domestic work as a separate category. And according to there is a sporadic survey which gives that there are 4.2 million domestic workers in India.
And since you said there is no particular study that defines domestic workers, do you think this sector is largely unregulated and informal? And could you please elaborate on why this is and why there is no proper work done in this sector for domestic work?
Domestic workers are a floating population. They are involved in different type of work. So that may be one of the reasons why there is so specific data available on domestic workers. Yes, domestic workers are not regulated, and they are informal workers. They are largely women, and it is a growing workforce in India. Since the domestic work is performed in a four wall and in a private household, it is still not considered as workplace. So the domestic workers are not recognized as workers. Also, they are not valued, and the domestic work is not considered as productive work, and it is considered as unskilled work. And they are not regulated by any labor laws, and they face a lot of discrimination. They are not paid decent wage. Their working hours is not regularized. They are not given weekly off. The living domestic workers who stay with the employers undergo loneliness, being separated from their families, friends, and children. They are vulnerable to violence, abuse, and sexual harassment. Many domestic workers are also a victim of trafficking, forced migration, and they are given very limited opportunity for skill development and career growth. They are not entitled to social security schemes, and only 14 states have fixed minimum wage for domestic workers. There is no national legislation for domestic work. And the ILO Convention C-189, which was adopted in 2011 also is not ratified by Indian government, and the states of Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra have set up welfare board to register domestic workers and to provide social security schemes. And in 2028, there was an unorganized workers Social Security Act that covers domestic workers. As per the law, all the states are supposed to set up a welfare board to provide social security benefit to domestic workers, but very few states have set up the welfare board, and even if they have set up, they have not provided any budgetary allocation to implement the board. The 4 courts which are in which all the labor laws are consolidated, also have excluded domestic workers. So there is the little right which the domestic workers were enjoying, also they are excluded.
Since you mentioned that domestic workers go through different kinds of problems, for example, the wages and the trafficking and the discrimination and abuse and everything, could you give us certain instances wherein you have found such workers in such situations?
Domestic workers who are forced to migrate from the tribal belt and who are brought to the cities for by the placement agencies are mostly vulnerable to exploitation, abuse, and they also the part-time domestic workers are accused of theft. When the domestic worker demands a high wage, the employer does not want to keep her for work, means they accuse them that they have stolen their things from their home, and they file case against them. Like that, many instances where the domestic workers are falsely accused and they are arrested. And also we in the past days there were many incidents in Delhi, Noida, and other major cities. Also the domestic workers were beaten by the employers. They were kept closed down in the houses. They were not paid well. They were not given proper food. They were not treated properly. They were harassed. Like that, there were many reports to prove that domestic workers are not safe in their employer's house.
My next question is related to the organization that you coordinate, that is the National Domestic Workers Movement. What are the advocacy campaigns that you have organized for domestic workers, and what is the kind of impact they have had?
Okay. We mobilize the domestic workers, we organize them, create awareness on their rights. Unless the domestic workers are aware of their right, they will not be able to bargain for better wage, for social protection. So we believe that the domestic workers should be empowered to fight for their right. They should participate in the struggle for their right. So we mobilize and organize them and create awareness on them. We give them various training to enhance their confidence level and to enhance their bargaining capacity. We also organize many campaigns, signature campaigns, poster campaigns, postcard campaigns, email campaigns, to reach out to the public or to reach out to the government officials. And we also have mass mobilization activities like public meet, demonstration, rally, conventions, where we mobilize the mass number of domestic workers, and we invite the policy makers, the political leaders to address the domestic workers and to promise that they will raise the issue of domestic workers in the state assembly or in the parliament. We also launch door-to-door meeting with the members of legislative assembly and members of parliament, and during the parliamentary session every year we go to Delhi. Our delegation goes to Delhi to meet the members of parliament to raise the issue of domestic workers in the parliament. We have also a network called National Platform for Domestic Workers, which consists of Central Trade Union, state level unions and member-based organizations. We have a lot of joint advocacy action. We had demonstration, and we had also round table discussion with the ruling party MPs as well as the opposition party MPs. And they promised that they will respond positively to the issue of domestic workers, and they will take up the issues in the parliament.
Okay.
And we all have approached the judiciary, the High Court and the Supreme Court for minimum wage to declare domestic workers under unorganized workers, and to set up welfare board. So in 4 states, we approached the High Court, we filed a PAL, and the verdict we got in favor of us. And media also is one of the advocacy tool. Media advocacy also we sensitize the public and the government through media, and for all our programs we invite the media personals, and they cover our programs, and we use this as a medium to reach our message to the public and to the government.
Like you said, you reach out to the legislature and the judiciary for policies on domestic workers. What kind of policies or like employee guidelines or wages, minimum wages, do you think should be applied to domestic workers in India?
Yeah, since there is no national legislation for domestic workers, there is so far no proper guidelines for employers. So we continue to demand the government. Our demand is to declare private home as working place, so that the domestic workers will be recognized as workers, and the employers are obliged to follow the rules and to protect, contribute for the protection of the rights of the domestic workers. And we also demand the registration of employers, and they should contribute for the welfare of domestic workers. And we demand housing, ESA benefit, EF for domestic workers, and the minimum wage. The states where already minimum wage is fixed, it is very minimum. It is not sufficient for the domestic workers to sustain their livelihood. So there should be decent living wage. So that is also our demand in the legislation. And there should be complaint mechanism. If any dispute arises with the employers, there should be proper committees to look into the grievances of the domestic workers. And also there should be skill development opportunity for domestic workers, and there should be proper data to bring visibility to the domestic workers. So these are our demands. In the government is making efforts to draft policy, but our demand is to enact legislation, because policy is only a guideline. The states are not obliged to implement legislation. The states are obliged to implement. So we are demanding for legislation for domestic workers.
Since it is such a unregulated workforce, how do you think domestic workers will be able to register for their rights against any kind of abuse or minimum wages, for that matter?
As I had mentioned, the domestic workers must be empowered, and they should be made aware of their rights, so that they will be able to bargain for their better wage, bargain for their social security benefit, and their skills, since the domestic workers are not considered as skilled workers, their skills should be developed. They must be given opportunity to for skill development so that their bargaining capacity will be enhanced, and they should be part of any associations or member-based organizations or unions, so that they get an identity and recognition, and they will get solidarity from different groups, and their voice will be heard.
Are there any grievance redressal or any kind of legal services that are provided to domestic workers currently for them to voice their concerns?
The Sexual Harassment Act to protect women against harassment in the workplace has included the domestic workers. But as per the law is supposed to set up a complaints committee, but in many places the complaints committee is not formed. So even there are any grievances, when they have any complaints, they have no place to go. So the legal cells are not set up. Only the organizations, the unions which are registering the domestic workers, they stand with them during their crisis time. They help them to go to the police station to file case and to follow up to get justice.